good day, emerging mothers. I hope all of you are well, and I hope that you're able to hear me. Of course, you all are aware of me now. Listen, when it's time to jump on, then I will, of course, stop wherever I am. It could be a restaurant. It could be a horseback riding ranch. Or just wherever, just to toss some tips and drop some gems. So listen, many of you all who are already in the Facebook group, of course, you know that our topic on today is the choices and poor social choices that teens make. And I really want to hone in on this and talk about 4 different matters, if you will, that I know are now heightened on the college campus. And I just want us to, as I'm talking to you directly, then you're able to influence your teen. It's almost like I'm supporting you directly, yet supporting your teens indirectly. But this could open up some conversation. So for many of you who have whereas your teen has transitioned onto the college campus, especially for some of you all where it's your first teen, they're a freshman, and just to provide some type of awareness regarding what happens there on the college campus. So when we talk about the consequences of making poor social choices, I want us to begin by just imagining that our teens who are 18, 17, 18 years of age, sometimes 16, getting ready to turn 17, their brains have yet to fully develop. Brains, take at least until about the age of 25 to develop. And so if we can keep that in mind, it's all about that frontal lobe, and that is the part of the brain that actually makes the decisions and reasons. And when it comes to choices, it's that frontal lobe that has the final say-so when it comes to which choice to actually be made. And listen, let's be honest, really it's God and our master of the universe who has the final say-so. But when it comes to our teens and them being able to make sound decisions and utilize wisdom, of course, it comes from that frontal lobe. Listen, it comes from the Holy Spirit, but by all intents and purposes, when we're talking about the brain, it comes from that frontal lobe. So, and that has yet to be developed. So for those who are already on the college campus, just imagine that how much stress and how much anxiety that they will sense and discern over, of course, this next year that's upcoming. So I just want us to, as they're on the college campus, to just utilize patience and compassion as they try to find their way while developing into, of course, young adults. So I know that we'll be able to allow patience as they're attempting to find their way. So listen, let's begin by talking about the problems that teens on the college campus may face, and then also share a little bit about the consequence and then the solution, if you will. And so I want to talk about the very first one, and that one being, of course, our teens have a tendency to spread themselves slightly thin, if you will. And listen, you'll see me turning from this way and that way because we're, of course, on 2 social medias, streaming live. And so I want to, make sure that I'm focused on both, please. So let's talk about teens and them spreading themselves just a little thin. And I want to make sure that when we talk about teens making poor social choices, I know that on the college campus that some teens are needing to pay their own way through school, whether they're attending college full-time, whether they're attending college part-time. that's their focus, is being able to care for financially their schooling. And so, a number of them, they work, they participate in work study, or they even work part-time off of the college campus, while they're taking 15 to 18 hours. And then, and then some of them, even on top of that, they may have a relationship that they're either pursuing or that they're involved in. And then, we need to think about those extracurricular activities, and that's on top of all of that. And then, even, maybe some are looking forward to rushing and participating in pursuing a sorority or fraternity. So just, we just talked about the brain and the brain developing, and then that coupled with some of what I just mentioned, and just trying to imagine just what that looks like for the team. And so I think that if we're able to inspire them to avoid spreading themselves so thin, because what could happen is, and looking at, of course, the consequences, that we're getting an improper amount of rest, and then what could happen thereafter is, we could, drift into dealing with mental matters then surfacing, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, and then feeling overwhelmed. And that's the one thing we definitely want to avoid. And so now that we've talked about, one of the problems that teens face, and I want to talk about 4 of them. There are a plethora of them, but I really want to talk about 4 of them on today. Then when we talk about that problem, and then we look at that consequence that I just mentioned in reference to, mental issues possibly surfacing, and them receiving them lack of rest because they're all over the place, and their schedule is unmanageable. Then I want to share with you and just give this food for thought as you're talking with your team, if it looks like they're heading in this direction, is to make sure that they're prioritizing their priorities. Listen, when I connected with my daughters, we wanted to make sure that we left that campus with the piece of paper in our hands that we went there to get. And so if there was any types of distraction that would lure us away from getting that piece of paper, by golly, we needed to make sure that that there was a minimal amount of time spent on whatever that distraction was. So we want to make sure that we're prioritizing our priorities as it pertains to whatever activities or hobbies or events or games. I mean, there's athletics on a number of college campuses, whether it's media meetings, whether it's social events, whether, whatever it is, we wanted to make sure that our studies were being taken care of. And so what I would do from time to time is just check in. I wanted to avoid overwhelming them throughout the week, but I sure did check in on Sundays to make sure that our T's are crossed, our I's are dotted, and that we're making sure we're doing exactly what needs to be done. I know at one point, I was needed to really hone in and just move it just a little bit closer to one of my daughters, because that's exactly what was happening. I think at one point she was taking about 17 hours, credit hours, and then also she was working, and she was pursuing biology and wanted to, moving towards medical school after she graduated undergrad. And so she was thinking about getting some clinical hours, and so she landed a position at the hospital that's on the college campus. And so, whereas I'm picturing part-time, we were on the phone talking, and she mentioned that, she was working full-time. And then I knew that she was attempting to pursue a sorority as well. And I was thinking, this this is a bit much. And so, we were, I was thinking, okay, let's do a timeout on this one, because we still want to be able to make the grades prior to us graduating, which she did. I'm so proud of her, and graduating in 3.5 years in biology with departmental honors. And so, however, I'm uncertain if she was able to accomplish that if she continued her position at the hospital 40 hours. That's a bit much. So I want us to be very, very careful in reference to, when we're talking and checking in with our teens, related to, what their schedule looks like, and just to make sure that it's something that's manageable. So when we talk about choices and making sure that, we're making good, sound choices, then of course that's one of them that I know has a tendency to be off kilter just a bit. So listen, the second one, that's the first one. The second one is when it comes to poor social choices, it's our teens, once they land there on the college campus, and I've noticed this happens with a number of freshmen, and rightfully so. It has a tendency to happen because freshmen are the newest on the campus. When we talk about anything beyond that, sophomore, junior, senior, unless they're transferring in, really they already have their set of friends and from the previous year, and they're pretty sound as far as the interactions and relationships and all of those different types of things. But typically the freshmen, they have a tendency to remain isolated. And when there's the tendency to be isolated as opposed to getting out and about and meeting people, and I know that it has a tendency to be challenging, then that can cause some issues. And so that's why it'll be important to engage them more and to help them in that area, because that can cause, of course, some mental issues as well, and that's something that we definitely want to avoid. I know that in our private Facebook group, we do have a group expert that helps and shares and gives advice in that area, and we did have her on a few months ago. If you're curious about maybe some steps or some strategies or anything along those lines, in our Facebook group, 𝙩𝙩. Her name is Debbie again, and she worked within social services, and she handled provided support for students, of course, her area of the college campus. Or I think they would maybe have been off of the college campus, but still provided but affiliated with the college campus. They provided lots of support for teens who needed just a little extra help. Maybe the teen had, maybe they had autism, maybe they had Asperger, maybe there was a little bit of dyslexia, or there could have been maybe a little bit of ADHD. Her area, the services that her department provided, her unit, the services they provided, let me just say that, they were able to help a number of students, because of course the support that they provided was actually needed. I want to, when it talks about emotions and when we talk about what all is entailed in that, I want to share with you a quote from Sigmund Freud. He said, and I'm just going to bring this up just a little bit. He said, unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways. And so I want to ask you, and drop in our chat, please, what your thoughts are about that quote. Do you think it's true? And then if you think it's true, then just elaborate just a little bit as it pertains to your thoughts. I thought that was very interesting, yet that's a very deep quote that I find to be true. And so, yeah, just share with me. Let me know your thoughts, and let's talk about that for just a bit. Okay? So that's the second one. Oh my goodness. So The first one, of course, is making sure that we, of course, are not avoiding. We are encouraging our teens to avoid spreading themselves thin, and then that whole isolation piece that has a tendency to make sure that that may set us off on a different track as well. Thirdly, also we talk about isolation, but also on the flip side of that is, maybe a little too much hanging with these newfound friends and partying a lot. So listen, hanging out with friends is fine. I just want you to receive the information I'm sharing in the spirit in which I'm articulating it. Hanging out is great. Partying is great. Listen, those who know me in my earlier years, especially those in college, know that I was able to participate in my fair share of partying, and I'm just being transparent. Those were some of the best years of my life. However, when we talk about the excessiveness of the hanging out and the excessiveness of the partying, that's where we have a tendency to run into some issues. So when we talk about that and making poor social choices, when it comes to hanging out and partying excessively, of course, then it brings into scope, alcoholism. It brings into scope drugs. Also, risky behavior, such as, having sex without sober consent. We're talking about, when we talk about excess of partying and hanging out, we're talking about making unwise choices as it pertains to our health. And when I just left and mentioned having sex and all of what comes with that impacts and affects in a negative way our health, because things can be transmitted and things can become traumatic and dangerous, and things can also move towards being criminal as well. So I want to read this statistic to you, because I know that rape and other matters, other issues, other occurrences and situations are at an all-time high on the college campus, and I want to make sure that we're talking to our teens when it comes to their social choices, making sure that they're making the wisest choice possible. So it says that among graduate students and professional students, 9.7% of females and 2.5% of males experience rape and sexual assault through physical force or violence or incapacitation. Then when we talk about undergraduate students, 26.4% of females and 6.8% of males experience rape and or sexual assault through physical force or violence or any type of incapacitation. So I just want us to keep those figures in mind, and those figures are at an all-time high, and we want to make sure we're avoiding that. So solutions can be to, take the necessary time for yourself. Do some self-care. Get away from the campus and walk, maybe to the park or through the neighborhood. Talk with your RA about just some things that can be done to just, keep your peace and keep, have a balanced schedule where it's, things aren't necessarily all over the place. Because even still, again, there can be some mental matters. Our mental health is like so important. The last thing we want is for things to happen, and then it leaves us with low self-esteem. It leaves us with us feeling down about ourselves, or our confidence level is low. Those are the last things that we need. We're faced with depression and lack of energy and hopelessness, and all of those different types of things. And so let's please make sure that our teens are making wise social choices. And then listen, I want to talk about the fourth one just briefly, where we talk about just relationships all in itself. Relationships are fun. We have a daughter, and they meet, of course, a boy on campus. We have a son, and that son meets, a girl on campus. Relationships are fun. They are. However, they can most certainly be a distraction. Yes, they can. Because we know that in the relationship, then, of course, the boy, the girl, they're together often. A disagreement may surface, and then that disagreement can then lead to them being distracted away from what they came to the school to do. And when that happens, then the attention is turned away from homework, the assignments, the tests, then building relationships with the teacher's assistants, the profs who are on campus, their labs, it like opens up a whole world of other issues. And so it, of course, can increase anxiety, and it leaves our teens sometimes making decisions that they would not have otherwise made had the relationship been non-existent. So I would encourage you, as I did, to make sure I'm maintaining clear communication with my team. And if, in fact, they're in a relationship or a relationship blossoms, then I am encouraging them to seek out maybe the counselor or some social support that's on campus to help them through, especially if my voice has become mundane and they're accustomed to hearing our voice, like, maybe an objective party to look at their situation in reference to their relationship from afar, so that they're able to make sound decisions. That can be a tough one, and it's hard for me to even give any clear advice regarding that, because that's on a case-by-case basis. There's no blanket situation or circumstance that can be handled by, when it comes to relationship, that can be handled by one piece of advice. So I would encourage you to encourage your team, if in fact they ever find themselves in a situation such as dealing with relationships on campus, to seek out some support there on campus from a faculty member that handles, of course, situations that could help in that situation. So I want to I wanted to drop those 4 tips so that we can make sure that you feel supported. I know that this is a time where teens are wanting to take ownership of their lives, and it's a time for them to make choices as they're moving into young adulthood. And so the ownership that it'll be important for them to take will help them and support them as far as their decision making is concerned. So listen, I want to encourage you to remain encouraged as we go into this fall semester. Also, I want to remind you that we have a conference that's coming up that will take place from 9 to noon on Saturday, September the 24th, 9 a.m. Central Standard Time to noon Central Standard Time. There will be information. We will work from a workbook. It will be impactful. You will definitely want to attend that conference. And then also we have a guest speaker this upcoming Wednesday. You will want to attend her talk. Is Mrs. Price. Kimberly Price, and she will talk to us about her journey during testimony time. Listen, I love you all. I appreciate you. I want to make sure that we remain prepared for what's ahead. For some of us who have been through the transition of our team, of course, previously, feel free to make comments or drop quotes or post pictures in our private Facebook page. I know that it will help other mothers who are involved, and if nothing else, it'll put a smile on their face because, of course, you thought about them, and then they know that there's someone there to support them who have encountered it as well. Again, love you much. This is our live for this week, but next week you'll want to tune in because, of course, Mrs. Kimberly Price, she has a very interesting journey, and she will be quite a treat to have. Take care, enjoy your weekend, and we will talk soon. See ya. Bye.